I want to have you talk specifically about the one recording project that you did, and that is the one where you focused on the repertoire of the castrato Carestini. Well, I think you could really tell the whole story of a castrato through looking at his repertoire, and they lived very unique lives.
Yes, absolutely. You know, that's probably, I did a lot of recordings, but that's probably my most personal CD, because I was dreaming on this CD for 10 years, because I had a big interest on Carestini for a long time. And, you know, it started with what I said before about Ariodante by Handel, because the first time I heard this aria, Scherza in Fida, an extract of Ariodante,
yes,
I was really impressed. And in the same time, I thought, for whom Handel has composed this aria, I could feel that this aria was very special, composed for somebody. And that's the first time I heard about the name of Carestini. And finally, after some research, I just really realized that finally Carestini sang more than 30 years all around Europe. He sang the most famous composers, Vivaldi, Scarlatti, Handel, Hasse, Gluck, and a lot of different Napolitan music, for example. And finally, he has a much more bigger career, for example, than Farinelli, that everybody knows.
Really?
And because Farinelli stopped to sing on stage quite early, and that's why maybe he became a legend, because a lot of people wanted to hear him, but he was not singing anymore on stage because he left Italy and London for Madrid, and he was just singing for the king. Mm. And then, you know,
this would have been when he was
about Farinelli. And finally, Carestini really sang all his life, and very different types of music. And what I like also, he had an incredible voice. He was an incredible actor. And what I like, I choose also Carestini because I think Carestini is more I don't know if we can say that in English, the archetype of
yes.
Castrato. He's really, because he was also very self-confident and finally quite proud of himself. And in a letter, he say to a director of theater that he is the only one able to sing this part in this opera, and that's why they have to give him a lot of money. You know, he was very typical. He was very a typical arrogant castrato. You know.
Yes. And
the castrato was like that. Finally, was quite an exception. He was a very educated guy, and what I like in this story is also that the majority of the castrato were coming from very poor families, And
well, this was part of the madness of it all, because these families would see an opportunity to make money off of their children. And then there were agents who were looking for young boys who were potential money makers for them.
Absolutely, and a lot of castratos had a lot of troubles with their parents after, because a lot of parents were asking for money to their children, you know. And that was, and finally, I thought that all these things, that's very touching. For example, when, you know, Carestini stopped to sing, he died, I think, maybe a few years after, completely poor, because finally he was absolutely, his reason in life was just singing, you know.
Yeah.
And finally, I think that's very touching also. They were made to sing, but not something else. And Carestini is a perfect type of life you can imagine. He was traveling a lot. It's really some. That's why I didn't want to speak just about Carestini. I think I wanted to build a project and to finally just explain what could be the life of a castrato. Also, I wanted to demonstrate one thing by this CD, with this CD, is that I'm convinced that this type of singers had a really important impact on the evolution of the style, you know. Because, for example, Carestini was very famous for his slow arias, you know, his adagios.
Yes.
And finally, at the end of his career, you can feel that the style is changing. It's maybe a little bit less virtuosic, but he's developing a more pure line, you know. And I'm convinced that this new approach inspired differently the composers. They wanted to maybe to compose for him something more simple, you know. And I think he contributed to the evolution of the style during this century.
Well, and this would be, if I'm hearing you correctly, the evolution from Baroque era styles to classical era styles and practices.
Yes, I think that the singers could have an impact of the evolution of the style.
Wow.
Yes, not only the composers. And the meeting between, for example, the old Carestini and Gluck or Graun, they composed for him something very special, and they changed the style, maybe because of this type of singers also.
Huh. Do you ever think about what happened to the thousands of other young boys who did not have a career as opera singers and yet were castrated?
And that's also a reason, I think, why public is very attracted by all this story about castratos.
Yeah.
Because finally, this story is a mixture of pure beauty and monstrosity, you know.
Yes.
And you need to sacrifice such a lot of young boys in the name of art, in the name of music, and that they couldn't stop because these voices were so amazing, so beautiful, and so appreciated that they couldn't stop this monstrosity to castrate such a lot of young boys. And there is a study, and they think that maybe just 1% of the castrated boys were doing a career on stage.
Wow.
And 1% is not a lot, of course.
Yes.
And some of them were singing in church, of course, because each church had his choir.
Yes.
And in particular in Italy, of course. And then that was the best they could dream before stage, after stage,
Sure.
And of course some of them were dying of infections, of course, or they were just servants, or just it was really something hard, and of course we cannot regret the disappear of castrato voices, because I think it could be very dangerous to start again with this conception, and to do it again could be very dangerous in, for example, the poor countries, because a lot of people will be interested again to do it on their children.
Sure.
It will be very dangerous.
You mentioned the name of Alessandro Moreschi earlier, the last countertenor, the one who we've been left a couple of recordings from. And I was listening to some of those recordings yesterday, and there was a quality in his voice that struck me. And it doesn't have to do necessarily with the timbre or anything like that, but there was some... I was left with this sense of angst, or some kind of yearning, or something. It almost occurs like a pain.
Yes, you're right. There is a very special color like this. And I think, that really that's why maybe in this CD we can realize why also the castrato voices were so popular and so appreciated in the 18th century, for example, is also because I think they were wearing their own drama of their life in the voice, and all this drama of the castration, not to be allowed to get married, for example. We can imagine the impact of this in the society of the 18th century. That was quite something very hard, and I think they were really, when they were singing, they were also something else. Not only singing, there is something touching, because finally that was singing. It was just the only way they have to finally to be real, no?
Yeah.
To have a reason of to live,
Yes.
And we can feel this also in the CD. Or maybe, of course, the sound is not good, but you can feel that singing is so important for him,
Yeah.
And something there is a very special force in the singing, and you can feel it. And I'm sure live it was very, very, very impressive to hear them and to hear all these emotions inside the voice.